We're not animals. We do what we got to do. We're not the nicest people in the world, but that's part of the business.
You're sort of a little king until they cut your boss's throat.
Double-crossing, double-dealing, violence up to and including murder.
My grandfather wasn't bad like some of these kids that just killed a foreigner on a vacation for no good reason. I mean, he killed for a reason. He killed somebody that bothered him or did something to him.
It all started out with a small gang of street hustlers who put together a criminal organization like nobody's ever seen. They kept their mouths shut, followed a deadly code of honor, did whatever they could to stay out of the spotlight. By the 50s, they muscled their way into the American dream, and with tabloid bluntness were known as the mob. The old godfathers rose to riches on a sea of booze. Their kids will drown in a spoonful of dope. There's a direct line from the days of bootleg whiskey to the ruined cities, ruined lives we see today. It's a story only insiders can tell. A story of loyalty and respect, of brutality and betrayal.
This is our life. This is how things are in La Cosa Nostra. When I was made a member of the family, boss of the family at the time, he pointed to a gun and a knife he had on the table in front of him. He says, "Would you use this gun or this knife to help anybody here if they had a problem?" I said, "Yes, I would." So after that, he told me, "Well, I'm going to take blood from your finger." I said, "Okay." And what I'm going to do, Philip, I want you to cup your hands, and I'm going to light this piece of tissue paper on fire. And as it's burning in your hands, I want you to juggle it and keep saying, "May I burn like this if I betray my friends." And after that, I was part of the circle. I was a made member.
I became a criminal, and probably by choice. I mean, I'd like to say I was a product of what I was born into, but I really don't believe that. I think people come out of my neighborhood, and some of them did really good for themselves. I could have took that path. I know now, and I didn't. I took the easy way.
There's no way you could tell somebody not to do it, you know, because if somebody would have told me don't do it, I would have told them, and I did. I told them 100 times. I told my wife, I told my mother. I said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to get involved in that life. I could stay on the fringes." But you can't, because they suck you in.
The downfall of organized crime in this country, as we know it, was their involvement in greed and in narcotics. Because narcotics, they make fast money, but the greed got them. Because when we grab guys for narcotics, they go away for life.
As things start evolving and changing and people start dealing with drugs, it changed. You know, it's not like it was in the old days.
It used to be very disciplined. They stuck to the rules.
those days, people had respect.
They were different kind of men. They had their own code of honor.
Ben Siegel and Meyer Lansky, and they were all so good to me. They had a loyalty. We all stuck together, our individual family. I think how lucky I was to be with these fellas. They had everything. We all had everything. So how could you not wind up loving these fellas? Well, you want to know how my guys missed the St. Valentine's Massacre? Oh, you want to know about the first time I ever saw Al Capone? You want to know how they got started? I remember everything.
As a little girl growing up in a small town in upstate New York, Bea dreams of being a dancer. By age 17, she is one. She arrives in the Big Apple where she meets and marries Mo Sedway, a gambler and racketeer, best friend to Bugsy Siegel.
I used to rub Moe's feet with nice cold creams and things and have him tell me the stories about when they were little. So I said, "How did you ever start making so much money?" And he said, "Well, down on the Bowery, there were push carts all along the way." And he said, "We used to have other gangs, Irish gangs, Italian gangs, and everything. But we, the Jewish kids, charged the push cart dealers $1. And we would keep all the other gangs from stealing off their push carts. Charged $1.
It's the old protection racket. Extortion. All the gangs do it. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish, Irish, or Sicilian.
Sicilians, 99.9% of them, like my grandfather. When they came here for their families. It was their intention to work hard to make sure their kids had a better life, that their kids could go to college, become doctors, lawyers, engineers, whatever. A small percentage of them wanted America for themselves, not for their kids. They were very ambitious men. They wanted to grab what they could. They got into La Cosa Nostra. These men now were smart, ruthless, tough, and tribal, unlike anything the other ethnic Americans had ever seen, really.
Although only a few turn to crime, all immigrants are stereotyped in the movies of the day as murderous, bomb-throwing, beer-guzzling anarchists. They're different, therefore suspicious. Not sure what else to do, the American majority, rural, white, and Protestant, focuses their hostility on the immigrants' love of drink. January 16, 1920. The manufacture and sale of liquor is banned. America finally passes a law the mob can sink its teeth into. It's a nutty law. The sale of booze is prohibited, but not drinking itself. Drinkers keep drinking, to hell with the law. America's attempt to write cheap moralism into the Constitution is about to run full speed into one simple, unavoidable fact. You can't legislate morality.
All those in favor of having a drink, say aye, aye, aye. All those in favor of having a drink, say aye, aye, aye. We take our drinks and think our thinks with glasses raised on high. All those in favor of having a drink, say aye, aye, aye.
Governors, representatives, and the congressmen of this country, I think they're all wet.
We had a profusion of Demitasse cups. in which no coffee ever was served, only whiskey. During the Prohibition days, 10 Prohibition inspectors knock on the door. By the time they finish knocking, the bar would have an automatic shelf drop. By pressing a button, everything that was on the shelves, all the bottles from which you poured your whiskey, the shelves inverted, the bottles dropped, and all that was left was the odor.
In the old days, the wise guys of the old days, and they weren't called wise guys then, but the men of respect in the old days, I don't think they really saw anything wrong with running rum. The people wanted booze. To them, there was nothing intrinsically wrong about drinking. There was this law against it, but there was nothing intrinsically wrong. And they felt not only could they make a lot of money, they were doing a service for the public.
Public service is my motto.
Al Capone.
I make my money by supplying a public demand. If I break the law, my customer's as guilty as I am. My rackets run strictly along American lines. This American system of ours, call it capitalism, call it what you like, gives each and every one of us a great opportunity if we only seize it with both hands and make the most of it.
Al Capone was determined to make the most of it. He was going to ride the booze business to the top. In his eyes, that meant running Chicago, and nothing or no one could stop him. Before Capone and Prohibition, the best-known crime boss in Chicago was Big Jim Colosimo. And in 1920, Colosimo was in love. He was more interested in his new flame than the new racket. He told his guys not to get into bootlegging. His old rackets, gambling and prostitution, were paying off just fine. He didn't want to expand. He didn't want the risk, the trouble. He liked things just the way they were. Five years after the hit on Colosimo, Chicago has a new boss. It's no surprise. Al Capone becomes the CEO of American Pleasure. He creates an international industry, all illegal, a vast organization of producers, importers, distributors, salesmen. He employs thousands of people, builds breweries, distilleries, starts trucking companies just to deliver his booze. Al Capone's making over $100 million a year. He's 26 years old. He opens nightclubs, controls entertainers, buys politicians and cops. And what he can't buy with a buck, he gets with the elegant efficiency of the Tommy gun.
Introducing the Thompson Automatic Anti-Bandit Gun, the most effective portable firearm in existence.
Firearms experts say Tommy guns are noisy, useless for sport or self-defense, unfit for any honest purpose. Capone and the movies loved them.
Get out of my way, Johnny! I'm gonna spit!
Come on, fellas! Hey, Tony! Take this along in case that bean shooter doesn't work.
Okay!
In automatic action, the gun will fire continuously until the trigger is released or until the magazine is emptied of its cartridges. Automatically, at the rate of 1,000 shots per minute. Sold only to responsible parties after a thorough investigation.
One of Capone's rivals, Frank McErling, becomes the first gangster to use the Tommy gun in Chicago. The day that Al Capone reads the news, he drives to his local hardware store and orders 3 Tommy guns for his own gang. Thus begins an arms race that will change America's cities forever. Al Capone.
Well, maybe the law of self-defense, the way God looks at it, is a little broader than the law books have it, right? Maybe it means killing a man who'd kill you first. Maybe it means killing a man in defense of your business. The way you make the money to take care of your wife and child. I think it does. You can't blame me for thinking there's worse fellas in the world than me.
The real Al Capone story has never been told. I mean, he was an amazing personality. You've got to realize that during his reign, and he was only the boss for 5 or 6 years, but in that 5 or 6 years, he was fighting off 3 groups of enemies. He's fighting off law enforcement, the Prohibition agents or Elliot Ness or any honest cop that might have been in the Chicago Police Department. He's also fighting the Irish gangs of Dee and O'Banion. He is also fighting the Sicilians, the Aiello brothers that he had to fight and kill. And he did a pretty marvelous job of all of it. But what was really his key to strength? It was politics.
Politics. In 1928, Capone's biggest expense is bribing public officials. But the unpopularity of Prohibition makes corruption easy and organized crime inevitable.
Organized crime means you're connected with politics. That's what makes it organized. You know, it's never organized if there's nothing else. It's not just because you have a gang. There are a lot of gangs of people around, but they have no other connections. The organized crime means contacts with legislators, with DAs, with judges, with people that can make sure nothing really bad happens to you. You know, that's what makes it organized. You needed cops not to raid you. You needed that because everything was illegal. I mean, these speakeasies could be busted any time. And when they were, it was for combination pitches, as they call them, you know. You had to do it so that the precinct captain can once in a while have a statistic, you know. So you go to the guy in advance, you say, look, we're going to pitch it tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Make sure not too much is there, this, that, and you know, you have to go. You're going to get arrested, there'll be cameras. Come out like this, put your thing over your head like a schmuck and do that, and that'll be the accommodation pitch. They'll bail you out, the judge will give you nothing, we'll put it off till the heat's off, and then you'll get a slap on the wrist. Everything is all worked out.
Bring on the girls and spike up the band.
Illinois Crime Survey, 1929.
We have complained of crime. We have preached respect for the law, yet we have exhibited to our youth the spectacle of policemen in full uniform, acting not only as customers, but as partners in our brothels, in our gambling houses, in liquor selling.
When you have prohibition, there's a price you're going to pay for it. One is corruption. It's going to happen. It can't ever not happen. Now a guy's used to taking money. He's used to making deals with the wrong people. And now you can have a shooting, and murder. And now they come to you with the same thing. But you see, they own you a little bit now. Murders were going on. Nobody got indicted. They said they only killed their own, but sometimes they didn't only kill their own, and still nobody got indicted.
The romance between Al Capone and the people of Chicago comes to an end on St. Valentine's Day, 1929. The newspapers that day report 6 men from the Bugs Moran gang and an unlucky optometrist who's a mob buff were mowed down in a Chicago garage. They were Capone's arch rivals. The shooters, of course, used Tommy guns, and everybody blames Capone.
Well, you want to know how my guys missed the St. Valentine's massacre? This is the story they told me. This is before my time. My husband had a habit that he loved to be up all night. but he would sleep sometimes till 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon before he'd get up. Then he'd have his 2 soft-boiled eggs, his orange juice, and half a cup of coffee, and that was the end. He'd go to work in the pits, in the gambling pits. So anyway, they told me that they all went to the hotel to try to get Moe out of bed. All of them, Davy, Berman, them, try to get, I think he said Davy was there. Davy could have been in prison in those years. He did 8.5 years in prison. Well, anyway, those part of our guys couldn't get Moe up, and they late getting him up. So they went over to where they all were supposed to meet in some big garage or something in Chicago. And then they got about a half a block after they parked the car from where they were going to go in, and then they heard machine guns going. So they turned around and raced back to the car. And after that happened, nobody ever yelled when Moe overslept. They'd say to him, "You tired, Moe? You go home and go to bed. We won't wake you up." Otherwise, they'd have been dead.
Today, in our much more violent nation, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre would be a minor 2-day story. But in 1929, it's a scandal. People can't get over that the killers had dressed like policemen, shot their victims in the back, and then the head. It's just too much. Capone falls from hero to villain overnight. He starts getting blamed for everything. Al Capone.
Every time a boy falls off a tricycle, every time a black cat has gray kittens, every time there's a murder, the police, the papers, they holler, "Get Capone!" Come on, they've hung everything on me, except the Chicago fire.
The mob's feeling the heat. St. Valentine's Day was very bad for business. So in Atlantic City, 3 months later, bootleggers from all over the country meet to avoid repeating Capone's PR disaster. They hammer out the basics. Carve out territories, put a lid on excessive violence, and above all, agree to be ruled by a national commission to which each and every one of them pledged their loyalty. They even get Capone to take the fall on a 2-bit gun charge, so things can cool off. Al gets 1 year. And when the stock market crashes later in 1929, he issues this statement from his cell.
Tell them I deny absolutely that I am responsible.
The crash is the beginning of the worst depression in U.S. history. Banks fail, businesses collapse, millions of Americans go on the breadline. The Depression is a disaster. But bad news for America has a way of being good news for the mob. After the stock market crash in 1929, America began its slide into the Great Depression, but not the mob.
The Depression hits, really gets fierce in the early 30s. Now, who had the money? These gangsters came with cash when cash was king, loaded with cash. No one else had it.
Wall Street, we Shylock there. Yeah. It was big business. At first, the clerks used to borrow. After a long period of time, the brokers themselves ran short. But I can't handle the brokers. They're too big for me. I got Happy Mayoni and his mob, and I brought them down to Wall Street. And if somebody wanted $50,000 or $75,000, Happy would give it to them. And Happy knew how to collect this from them. With a hatchet, a cleaver, they'd open up the guy's head.
And these guys, these swaggering guys who were only 10 years before, were in Sing Sing, were bums, were in the slums, were now big shots with money.
In an odd way, the Depression forces Italian and Jewish gangsters to become Americans. Now their horizons reach beyond old neighborhood loyalties, beyond Mustache Pete's. Rising young men such as Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, and Charles Lucky Luciano, well, they see grander possibilities. The price? Replacing old loyalties with new ones.
So Charlie Lucky wanted to break this hold of these Mustache Pete's who were still arguing against doing anything big time and only keeping it within the realm of only Italians, only Sicilians yet, not just even Italians, but you had to be a Sicilian, which would have kept a guy like Frank Costello out. It was crazy. But this is what they wanted. So to break that, he went in league with the Jewish mobs, which were Lansky and Ben Siegel, called the Buggenmeyer Gang. Buggenmeyer, they used to say.
Meyer Lansky, born Meyer Sucho Lansky in Grodno, Poland. He came through Ellis Island at age 9 and grew up in the hard streets of Brooklyn and the Lower East Side. They call him Little Man. Only 5'5", he's the intellectual of the group, a deal maker, mathematical genius.
When he came over from Poland, the records were lost of his birth date, and he took 4th of July as his birthday. And I think that says it all. He was very proud to be an American and what he had worked for here and accomplished in his life.
Benjamin Siegel, known as Bugsy because of his violent temper. He became Lansky's friend on the Lower East Side. Lansky's smart and quiet. Ben's handsome and flamboyant and deadly. Together, they run bootleg whiskey and crap games.
Bugsy was in all the gambling joints. Bugsy liked to gamble.
He was, a very handsome man.
Bugsy didn't bother nobody.
And he was the killer, he was the punch-out guy, he was everything.
He had two sides completely. He was a complete charmer. You had to like him. If he was your friend, he would do anything for you.
He gave me $100 every time he gambled.
He was like a businessman. Argue about rates, argue about these things, but never belligerent.
But don't you call him Bugsy?
None of us called him that.
You had to call him Benny.
But every once in a while, somebody'd slip and say Bugsy, and then you saw an insane Bugsy Siegel, Benny Siegel.
Ben was always behind everybody. Ben was like the protector. He was the first one to fight. Of course, they all had a fight. Even Meyer had a fist fight all the time, and Moe had a fist fight. You had to prove yourself, or you weren't in it. And if somebody had to be shot, nobody had to ask anybody because Ben was always in back, saving everybody's back. And that's why, especially our little mob, later I realized it was my little mob too, but that's why we were against the bad guys and we all stuck together. We were supposed to be our individual family. And that's how we wound up.
As teenagers, Lansky and Siegel meet another young gangster on the East Side, Charles Luciano, Charlie Lucky. He immigrated from Sicily at age 9 in 1906. He sold dope, he sold muscle, he sold whiskey. By 1929, he's one of the men organizing the modern mob.
Luciano was a far-seeing guy, so was Frank Costello. They understood the old days of the mustaches were gone, of you have to come from Sicily is gone, and who cares who you do business with? The Jews are smart, let's do it with them. The Jews felt the same way.
Lucky Luciano has a vision of an American mob. But two old-fashioned Mustache Pete's stand in his way. Joe the Boss Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano. With their hundreds of loyal mafia gunmen, they're the most powerful and dangerous men in New York. Luciano got his nickname when one of them kidnapped and tortured him, leaving him for dead near the Staten Island ferry. But somehow, he lived. To the police, all Luciano would say was, "I'll take care of this in my own way." To his gang, he said, "I guess I'm just lucky to be alive."
They found him beat up so bad, and his head nearly was cut out, decapitated. He always had a big scar from his lower lid, and it was as wide as my finger, and I've got wide fingers now from arthritis. Pulled it down, and it would go all the way down. It was, well, I thought he was great looking, because I don't like pretty men.
Luciano was pushing hard to get rid of Masseria, Joe DeBoss, and Maranzano. These guys were the old-time guys, Maranzano even bigger, who thought he should be the capo di tutti capi and all that. And he announced things like this jerk, you know, he's announcing that this is what he's going to be. He organized the idea of the 5 mafia families and all that.
My uncle is the man, Salvador Maranzano, who created the 5 families.
Maranzano, he decided, yeah, they're going to be different bosses, but I will be the boss of all the bosses.
And they said, "Sal, you want New York?" And he said, "Sure, I want New York." He said, "New York is yours." And in 1924, New York became his. Except for Joe the Boss. Joe the Boss was in New York, too. And there was the conflict. The conflict was there were 2 bulls in the same china closet. Could only be 1 bull at a time in a china closet. Because the china they wanted to put in their pockets. They didn't want to give it to you, they didn't want to give it to me.
While the old world bosses squabble over neighborhood rackets, Lucky makes his move. On April 15, 1931, he invites his boss, Joe Masseria, to Coney Island for lunch and a friendly game of cards. After a couple of hands, Lucky disappears into the men's room for a few minutes. Just long enough for Ben Siegel and 3 other gunmen to shoot Masseria to death.
My uncle and Lucky, even though Lucky was working for Masserio, made a pact that Lucky would kill Masserio, which everybody knows. This is common knowledge, so I ain't telling you anything out of the school books. Then, Lucky even had a bigger visionary. Kill them both.
So Luciano really decided that Maranzano had to go, and he probably called on Meyer Lansky to handle it.
And Meyer Lansky and the guys from Murder Incorporated whacked my uncle.
These Jewish gangsters, patently not Italian, walked into the office as Internal Revenue officers and said, "We're here from Internal Revenue and we're going to ask to look at the books. Where is Mr. Maranzano?" His bodyguard said, "Well, we'll get him. He's in his office."
They went in, 2 guys went in as policemen, 2 guys went in as suits. They stabbed, they shot
and stabbed him.
And they did everything else under the sun to the guy.
And made their escape.
And that was it.
So it was a hit by Jewish gangsters, but only as a favor to Lucky Luciano, who wanted it done.
But this was the big hit. They had to get rid of Maranzano. And then when they did that, they were able to turn the Italian mob into the American mob.
And Lucky Luciano became the head honcho.
Lucky Luciano's on top of the world. He moves into the towers of the Waldorf Astoria. He receives the loyalty of gangsters around the country. He commands the most organized crime empire in the world. And for his troubles, he earns an estimated $1 million a month. He's 32 years old.
My, oh, yes. This joint is jumping, really jumping. Come and check your hand. I beat this joint is jumping.
And saloons are outlawed. Only outlaws run saloons. In joints run by the mob, they sell not only booze, but entertainment as well. While countless performers like Sophie Tucker, Joey Lewis, Jimmy Durante, and Fat Swallow keep the old speakeasies jumping, Prohibition's marching to its end.
150,000 individuals who demand the return of beer. An endless procession. All day long, the tramp of marching feet echoes down the dry canyons of the big city.
13 years of prohibition have backfired. Everything has gone wrong. People are drinking more, not less. Urban violence and public corruption are at an all-time high. The public is fed up with this so-called noble experiment. The mob's golden goose is about to be cooked. The Volstead Act is about to be repealed.
Our word as to beer. I favor the modification of the Volstead Act just as fast as the Lord will let us. And of very, very great importance as a part of that, remember that that is a way to divert $300 million or more by way of taxes from the pockets of the racketeers into the treasury of the United States.
Hear that tune? Everybody doing it pretty soon. Have me and you in it. It's the talk of New York. Then call popping up cars.
With repeal in 1933, the hard men of the mob do not enter monasteries or return to honest labor. Instead, they choose to live off the labor of others.
It was a year of labor unrest throughout the nation. On the West Coast, cannery workers staged a long and bitter strike that resulted in scores of injuries and one death. A shoe strike in Auburn, Maine, that brought out the National Guard after violence threatened.
The mob, looking for new scams, joins the battle. They start breaking heads. They work for the bosses, they work for the unions, and sometimes they work for both. Anything for a buck.
And every time a truck went by that had to make a delivery to a non-union shop, we threw stink bombs in there. Then the moving picture people, they went on strike. So we had to throw stink bombs in a moving picture. Then in restaurants. And we did it. We did good work.
One of the first gangsters smart enough to see the money in the labor rackets was Dopey Benny Fine.
My first job as a gangster was to go to a shop and beat up some workmen there. The man that employed me, a union official, offered to pay me $100 for my work and $10 for each of the men I hired. I divided them into squads, passed out pieces of gas pipe and clubs. We met the workmen we were after as they came home from work and beat them up. I was always busy after that.
Between the way of the mob in Prohibition and the way of the mob afterwards, after Prohibition, one was a situation where innocent people did not have to be troubled because it wasn't a crime to drink and you were their customers. They wanted to feast off you. They didn't want to hurt you. They killed each other for control of that. And all of them were in an illegal business killing each other. But then they got into the labor rackets. And they used the gun the same way as they did before, only this time the victims were innocent people. Very often good people who try to reform things.
There are two main obstacles to reform. Louis Lepke Buchhalter and his partner, Jacob Gura Shapiro. They take the labor rackets to another level.
These kids came from Europe. They didn't know how to read or write English. They had to be tough. They had to survive. I'm not saying what my grandfather did was right, but he did it, you know? He just did it.
Lepke and Garah mob, what they did was they noticed something. This was Lepke, who was really a genius.
Lepke had 350 killers working for him.
He was a 4-star general in the combination, and he had big rackets, and he had a lot of money.
He had Fat Charlie, he had Shear, he had all these guys working for him, so he could give a contract out to anybody.
And he was easily the equal of Luciano, Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, and bigger than Lansky for many years.
Lepke never let nobody cut in on him.
He was both in bootlegging and the industrial rackets before anybody knew about industrial rackets.
So Lepke, he'd go to this factory and he'd say, you gotta pay me so much. He went to the truck driver and he said, you gotta pay me so much. And if you didn't pay him, he'd kill all the merchandise. That was a garment war.
In the 30s, Lepke the brains, Garah the brawn, ruled the garment industry with one simple weapon: fear.
There were 50 trucks that took everything out of the garment center. And there was a little company union. They went in and broke a couple of heads, and they had it. And then if you wanted to ship, you had to come to Lepke and Garah. Or you couldn't get the stuff out. What good was it? Everything was shipped out of 50 trucks out of one place on 7th Avenue. Find the small thing. Find the vulnerability. If you can do that, then you have them by the short hairs, right? It's perfect.
Once in the door, Lepke and Garah worked both sides of the garment wars, extorting money from employers, skimming dues from union members. They do it the same way they rule the pushcarts on the Lower East Side. They break heads, torch shops, and Garah buries anyone who stands in their way.
My grandfather wasn't bad like some of these kids that just killed a foreigner on a vacation for no good reason. I mean, he killed for a reason. He killed somebody that bothered him or did something to him.
Once Lepke and Garah saw up the garment business, they take their muscle on the road, seizing the bakery drivers' union, demanding a penny a loaf tax for every loaf of bread sold in New York. Other mob leaders move up the food chain. Joe Sox Lanza gobbles up the fish market. Tommy Lucchese moves into poultry. Around the country, gangsters are doing the same. In the mid-30s, the mob moves into Hollywood, shaking down the very studios that glorify them. The gangster's presence is everywhere. As the Illinois Crime Commission observes,
the following industries and services are known to be under the control of gangsters: laundry, ash and garbage removal, building wreckage, cleaning and dyeing, carbonated beverages, linen supply, motion picture operators, paving, teamsters, sanitary workers, building materials, railway express, dairy products, roofing materials, kosher meats, window washers, tobacco, garages, ice, excavating, ice cream, flour, coal, barber, bakers, and 32 other industries, including beauty culture.
If a guy has a business, and you can see that you can walk in and get a piece of the business, it's nice to own businesses indirectly. It's nice to own a shoe company. It's nice to own a sock company, a pant company, or this company, or that company, or whatever. It's nice. Because you see, if you eat from one table a week, you can only eat so much food. But if you eat from 5, 10, 12, 15 families a week, you're going to eat very well.
By the mid-30s, the mobs organized everything. including murder. A small collection of homicidal maniacs are on call as the enforcement arm of the mob. Later, a newspaperman named Harry Feeney of the New York World Telegram comes up with a name that will make them famous.
Murder Incorporated was a name that the New York newspaperman gave to a bunch of hitmen, that were taking contract killings. If they didn't give it that name, we'd never have known about it. Because it's very hard to find a really good assassin, a difficult thing to do. When you talk to an assassin, he says, well, I did some work with this guy, I did some work with that guy. It's work, they call it work. Lepke came up with the idea of calling it a contract to hit somebody, a hit, a contract work. It's never a murder, never a rub out. Only in the movies is it a rub out. You do work.
Monticello in upstate New York was one scene of Murder Incorporated's terrorism. Originally a Brooklyn gang, it is thought to have committed more than 100 cheap murders at wholesale killing rates.
Murder Incorporated was an idea made up for the purpose of reducing violence. What they were saying was, we want violence to be controlled, and we want violence to be controlled by us. The actual hitmen were recruited in Brooklyn, one from Jewish communities, and that was headed by Lepke Bacalta.
Lepke would give the contract to Albert Anastasia.
The other one was headed by Albert Anastasia. So the killers were made up almost equally of Italian and Jewish strong-arm men.
Pittsburgh Phil Strauss, he had his method of killing people. They give the contract to Happy Bayoni. He had his method with a cleaver. Every one of them had their own methods.
For instance, Ice Pick Willie, he had a bar in Minneapolis. It was upstairs. They wanted to get rid of somebody, they'd send him to Willie's bar and he'd put an ice pick in their head and slide them down the coal chute.
One of the methods that they did employ in Murder Incorporated for killing people was strangulation. Abe Relis had earned the nickname Kid Twist. So put the rope around the fellow's neck and pull it in tight and twist real hard, and you've killed him.
Vito Chickenhead Garino used to sit in his backyard with a bunch of chickens running around and shoot their heads off just for practice. That's Chickenhead Garino. Frank, the dasher, Abendando's gun misfired at point-blank range during a hit. So he chased the guy down the block, caught up with him, and pumped 3 bullets into his back. That's Frank, the dasher, Abendando. And then there's Red Levine, a homicidal maniac who's so religious, he refuses to kill on the Sabbath.
Red Levine.
Red Levine was he was medium-sized, pudgy, and he used to have these heavy bags under his eyes, which later he had taken off by plastic surgery.
Red Levine.
Red Levine was a major killer. In other words, he didn't kill ordinary people. He killed important people.
Red Levine was one of the worst. He was the worst.
We would be sitting there and having dinner, and all of a sudden he would excuse himself and say he's got to go to work. And nobody knew what work was. He was out to kill somebody that night. And it was just like an ordinary night. Until I used to sit around and listen to my dad with his friends. And then I found out what Red Levine was.
But he was a deadly killer. Oh, he was the guy that got Marizana.
Red was not really an enemy. He came on like your best friend. And that's how he got to people. I mean, it's not easy to go into a car and shoot somebody right at close range and not get hurt yourself.
He went up to Lepke and he says, none of you can get the pretty. He says, I'm the only one pretty trusts. So they says, all right, you go take him. He got him in a car, killed him, and they burnt the body. They ignited the car. And they got rid of Pretty.
Pretty Amberg was a gangster who bucked the mob. He refused to kick back any money from his rackets. He said Murder Incorporated couldn't make him do it. A tough guy, he was so ugly, his nickname was Pretty. He ran Brownsville, New York, loan sharking, numbers running, killing. Amberg bought a laundry, the paper said, because he needed bags to stuff his bodies in. But when he killed a small-time gambler protected by Murder Incorporated, they marked him for death. He went to war, starting with B. Sedway.
One night, the bad guys, the other guys, gangs, tried to kidnap my mother. They just had us mixed up. They thought my mother was Moe's wife. And then Ben told me, he said, don't ever leave the Paradise unless one of us or two of us pick you up and we will take you back to the hotel. And until I tell you different, that's the routine. And I said, okay, why? But why? He said, not only what happened to your mother, but never ask me why. When I tell you something, he said, you just do it.
Pretty Amberg's body was found early yesterday morning in a blazing automobile. His head and shoulders had 8 or 9 deep wounds. His body had been wrapped in 2 khaki blankets, and his wrists and ankles had been wired. Amberg's police record was as follows. November 13th, 1914...
About 3 days later, in the New York Mirror, on the front page was a picture of a car. And under it said that a guy named Pretty Amberg had been found chopped up. But I didn't connect anything yet, really connect anything, until a day later, after the paper came out, Ben said to me, you can walk home now. Walk back anytime you please. That's what made me think, well, gee, maybe the girls are right, because they showed me the paper. They said, this is Murder Incorporated you're looking at, or mafia work. And then I said, well, gee, it must be, because now I can walk home.
For a secret society, the mob was getting a lot of ink. Cops and politicians talked about crackdowns, but nothing happened. In 1933, one man will change that. A young U.S. attorney from New York, Thomas E. Dewey.
The racketeers have flung down their challenge. I accept that challenge.
Dewey intends to win this fight by any means possible. He finds unlikely, but willing allies. The prostitutes of New York. Like a guest who stays too long, the mob's worn out its welcome. America's fed up.
I need a small squad of detectives who will go to work on this job as they never have before.
No punishment can be too severe for these public enemies. They deserve the whipping post or worse.
If criminals were treated as they treat us, crime would cease. Take away their prison luxuries and give them a taste of the rock pile.
It's too bad that we even have to pay for their support. Their extermination would be much more satisfactory.
It is not my purpose, said Dewey, to prosecute prostitutes and pimps. I want the big shots. I want Luciano, the czar of organized crime in this city. The ambitious prosecutor can't bust Lucky Luciano on anything else, so he finally charges him with white slavery. Dewey comes up with witnesses to support his charge. They say Lucky's the king of pimps. They say he runs prostitution rings. They say his women are paid $25 a week. They say Luciano makes $12 million a year. A chorus of 68 women sing the same songs. It's music to Dewey's ears.
I heard Lucky say one night, I wouldn't have cared what he accused me of. Let him accuse me of murders or anything else. But to accuse me of white slavery? My God, that's the last thing I'd ever want anybody to say that I did.
Luciano was not a pimp. He was not running prostitutes. Absolutely true. He was not running prostitutes. He was one of the best customers that Polly Adler and her whorehouse ever had. What he was guilty of was extortion. He was shaking down the pimps, he was shaking down the madams, and all the prostitutes had to kick into a defense fund, so when they were arrested, you used Luciano's lawyers. You had to get your bail bond from Luciano's people. He was not running the prostitutes and the madams and the pimps, he was shaking them down. Once a month, you take a big envelope full of money and you say, thank you, Lucky, and this is for you. When you push that envelope full of money over there, he has technically violated the White Slavery Act and is guilty.
Charlie Lucky Luciano. Shackled to his henchman, the overlord of a $12 million a year vice ring goes to prison for from 30 to 50 years. At Sing Sing, the droopy-eyed gang leader gets his last glimpse of the outside world for many years. When he comes out, he'll be an old man. New York's big shot is now just prisoner number 92168. The lowest form of racketeering has been given a death blow, and Lucky is lucky no more.
Time in the joint is part of doing business in the mob, and it's business as usual. Even in Sing Sing, Luciano still runs the rackets. His mob remains loyal. Lucky's boys just need an idea, a plan, some way to put in a fix and get the boss out. It will take 10 years, but Luciano's luck will pay off eventually. In 1937, with the city's most infamous gangster off the streets, Dewey and his gangbusters set their sights on the next hood on the hit parade.
For many years, Louis Buckhalter, known as Lepke, has been the worst industrial racketeer in America.
Lepke goes into hiding.
Lepke wanted, dead or alive. After presses at New York police headquarters roll 1 million circulars, launching a nationwide search for America's new public enemy number 1, Louis Buckhalter, alias Lepke, the big city's most feared racketeer.
The search leads to what the racket guys call the Big Heat. It's a crackdown that hurts everybody's business. Suddenly, Lepke doesn't have so many friends anymore.
The fugitive Lepke is said to have extorted millions by terrorizing employers and workers. One by one, possible witnesses have been bumped off following his indictment.
To beat the rap, Lepke hits upon a simple idea. Kill everyone who can testify against him. For a while, being a possible witness against Lepke is New York's most dangerous occupation.
The New York police and federal agents are working together in a nationwide search.
The Big Heat just keeps getting hotter. The search for the racketeer spreads around the country, even to Europe. Meanwhile, Lepke's right under their noses, hiding in Brooklyn, under the protection of Murder Incorporated.
This fugitive must be found dead or alive.
We went into an Italian restaurant in New York, and it was with Lepke. He was there. He was trying to keep from getting executed or something. And we all were having like a farewell dinner, which we hoped wouldn't be a farewell dinner. And at the Italian restaurant, we had a big table spread out, and there was windows, big windows there. And all of a sudden, a car comes around and starts machine gun in the window, and Ben yelled, "Down!" And I started, there was a ladies' room in back of us. So I started slithering on my tummy, and then I went in and I stood up on the seats so nobody could see my feet. And I just stayed there. I was there long enough to see Ben and the boys tip up the table like that for protection and duck. And then in a little while, Moe came to the door and he said, "Honey, you can come out now." So I came out and I didn't know what I was going to find because most of the wives and sweethearts were heavier than I was. Some of them were big. I don't think they could have crawled like that and slithered in there. But anyway, the table was all reset again, and new antipastos, came out there and was set, and nothing was ever mentioned.
Attention, public enemy number one, Lepke Buckhalter. I am authorized by John Edgar Hoover, the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, to guarantee you safe delivery to the FBI.
And so I remain your New York correspondent, Walter Winchell.
1939. Lepke's been on the lam for 2 years. The feds want him for narcotics, Dewey wants him for murder. Mob bosses want the heat turned down. It was time to make a deal.
And now I want to tell you about the actual surrender, the actual delivery of public enemy number one, Lepke.
The bosses tell Lepke they've got a deal. If he surrenders to Hoover, he will avoid Dewey and the death penalty. Columnist Walter Winchell becomes the go-between.
Taking Lepke by the wrist like a little boy, I said, "Come on, Lepke." With that, I opened the door of Mr. Hoover's car. As I opened the door of Mr. Hoover's car, I said, "Lepke, this is Mr. Hoover. Mr. Hoover, this is Lepke."
Then came the great double cross. There was no deal. Lepke was turned over to Dewey, convicted of murder, and sentenced to fry in the electric chair.
Lepke got right to the point. Walter, I will ask you one thing. Did you ever tell any of my friends that if I came into you for the FBI, that the most I would get would be 10 years? Lepke, I said, I never told that to anybody. In that 1 second, I saw the eyes of a killer. And then for the first time, he seemed to realize that his own friends had double-crossed him. Excitedly, I said, "This is Walter Winchell, public enemy number one, Lepke, just surrendered to the FBI." My editor said, "Oh, how do you know?" "How do I know? I just turned him over." He said, "Oh, you and your silly scoops. Hitler just invaded Danzig."
The world's at war. The mob could care less. The boys have got big problems of their own. For the first time, the mob's code of loyalty is about to be challenged. In 1940, the cops pick up murdering hitman Abe Relis for homicide. He tries to save his own skin by turning informer. Relis tells the cops about 49 murders in Brooklyn alone. In court, his testimony could easily convict big shots like Ben Siegel and Albert Anastasia. But that never happens. Room 623, the Half Moon Hotel on Coney Island. Prosecutors keep their valuable witness accessible to no one, under police guard 24 hours a day. Yet, somehow or other, in the early hours of November 12, 1941, Relis mysteriously falls, or is pushed, out his 6-story window. Instead of becoming the first insider to betray the mob, Relis becomes a warning to other potential informants. As the boys later joked, Relis was a canary who could sing, but he couldn't fly. Even a squad of cops, a locked room, and the personal guarantee of the DA could not keep Kid Twist alive. After Relis, it will be decades before anyone even dreams of ratting again. World War II is great for the mob.
The world was at war, and they were at peace. For the first time in a long time, they were really at peace, you know. And the world was at war, so what could be a better situation than that? And more to steal, too.
Arms for the love of America.
During that time, either I went into the Army or I get a defense job. So I got a defense job in GE. And while we were in there, they had the rationing of gas. We used to steal thousands of gas stamps and give it to the mob.
They organized black markets all over. It was hard to get things. They always managed to get things that no one else could get, you know, tires and butter and, you know, all the stuff that you can't get. That's prohibition of another sort. The minute you put on controls on the public and the demand still stays, there's the mob, it's perfect for them and they can just walk in and do something.
The broads. Numbers.
412, 475, quarter each.
Mostly enforcement. How I say enforcement? You have a store. They case the store for a week or so, see how things are, beepity-boppity-boop, and if they see there's much action, they go into the store owner and they say, we want a piece. Now, if you didn't want to give a piece, that's fine. You got either hurt, you got either blown up, or you got wasted.
1942. The mob hears the best news in years. The Normandy is supposedly sabotaged.
In New York's Hudson River, a 5-alarm fire sweeps the former French luxury liner Normandy. The liner was receiving finishing touches as the United States Navy auxiliary ship Lafayette when flames broke out. For 4 hours...
The burning of the Normandy makes the Navy see potential sabotage everywhere. So, the mob's resident genius, Meyer Lansky, pitches the Navy the idiotic notion that only one man in America can save our ports from sabotage. Prisoner number 92168, Lucky Luciano. Even more idiotic, the Navy buys it.
One of the greatest farces was the suggestion that Lucky Luciano could be used to help save the port of New York. Ask yourself this question. If the port of New York was saved from any further acts of sabotage by the help of Lucky Luciano, who saved the port of Baltimore? Who saved the port of Charleston? Who saved the port of Boston? Because if you check, there was heavy tonnage going out of all of those ports too, without anybody protecting us. So the farce was created that had been very helpful. The naval officer who concocted this whole idea after World War II is rewarded. He's made Commissioner of Marine and Aviation in the city of New York, that he's well paid for, and that was his little thank you for inventing that kind of a story and going along with us. Lucky Luciano was allowed to agree to deportation and then get a pardon from the same man who sent him to prison. Special Prosecutor Dewey sent him there, and Governor Dewey granted him a pardon from a New York jail, and he accepted deportation and went back to Italy.
Charlie Luciano's free. Lucky as ever. Not so his fellow crime boss, Lepke Buchhalter.
In New York, Lepke, gangster boss of Murder Incorporated, leaves federal jail for Sing Sing's death house.
March 14th, 1944. Lepke's date with death. The one-time king of the labor rackets, boss of Murder Incorporated, knows where all the bodies are buried. But he won't rat. The government offers him a deal, but he won't rat. Lepke knows his own friends have betrayed him, but he won't rat. If things were different and Lepke was on the street, he'd murder every mob boss who set him up, probably with his own bare hands. But he wouldn't rat. At 11:16 p.m., Louis Lepke Buchhalter fries in the electric chair, protecting the very men who had betrayed him, rather than become a rat. The code of loyalty is still in place.
Kiss me twice, then kiss me once again. It's been a long time. Haven't felt like this before since can't remember when. It's been a long, long, long time.
I believe Meyer Lansky looked up into the skies after World War II and saw all our returning aircraft coming back from the war. And he said they're not going to stop building airplanes. But instead of carrying bombs, they're going to carry people. So instead of paying off in Florida and in Covington, Kentucky, and all the other places we have to pay off to have illegal gambling, Las Vegas will only be hours away by aircraft. And he sent Bugsy Siegel out to develop their interests in what became Las Vegas.
I thought to myself, why would they come to a place like this? On the main street, there was a club, and there was only 3 tables in it. A roulette table, a big wheel, and a poker something. Meyer said, 300 miles to go from LA to this place. Is there anything that we can do out there? And that's when Ben got down there and he said, geez, we'd have to have something out here. There's nothing here. You'd have to put up something to make people come here.
And what made it a failure was because Benny knew nothing. He was not a businessman. He knew nothing about construction. They would bring in a ton of concrete today, and when the sun went down, they stole it back and delivered it back again the next day. And he didn't. I mean, he kept paying the bills. He imported palm trees from Hollywood. We understand that those same trees made one trip, but were billed for 14 trips from Los Angeles to the Flamingo. When the hotel was open, the kitchen doors were swinging the wrong way. I mean, he had no concept of business. And that was his downfall. When everybody says he stole all this money, I don't think he did. I don't think Virginia Hill did either. I think they said, Benny, get out. Now you got an insane man. Here's his baby he gave birth to. Oh, I'll fix it up. I'll fix it up. Well, they fixed him up before he fixed it up.
June 20, 1947. Ben Siegel is shot to death in Beverly Hills. The bullets crush the bridge of his nose and shatter a vertebra on his neck. The remains of his left eye are found on the other side of the room.
Ben, he used to say, whenever you walk into any room, you hold your head high and walk in, hesitate a little, and look all around the room like you own the place. Because if you walk in like that, they'll figure you're somebody important and you've got it made. I always was proud to be with him. Really proud. I was even proud that everybody was afraid of him. I thought he had so much guts.
This is clearly a mob hit. There's no way it could have happened without the reluctant agreement of Siegel's oldest friend, Meyer Lansky. For Meyer, loyalty to the mob comes first. Friendship and even love comes second.
I met Lansky in Israel in 1972, and I said to him, the rap they always put on you, Meyer, is that you gave the nod to the hit on Ben Siegel. Lansky gave me a look. I never saw eyes as hard as that. All of a sudden, he banged his hand on the table, and he said, know that they say that. He said, it's a total lie. What kind of man do they think I am? This was my best friend, and I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, you did it, you best. And I'm looking at the door. He said, where are you? How long you staying in Israel? So I said, well, only a few days. He said, can you be here another extra few days? Because Benny's grandchildren are coming here as my guests. You think I would do a thing like that? So then I thought, for sure he did it.
On the night of Bugsy's death, two men walk into the Flamingo Hotel. They will become famous as the men who saved the Flamingo, transforming Bugsy's folly into the mob's new golden goose. One's a guy named Gus Greenbaum, the other, Mo Sedway.
Gus Greenbaum and Mo Sedway walked into the Flamingo Hotel Casino and said, we are now operating this hotel. And that's all they had to say. It wasn't like a takeover from General Motors. You didn't have to sign a contract. You would believe them when they said that. At that time, I should have gotten away because I had a lot of contacts. I was doing television. I was well known. I was fine. But I have to be honest. They got me with the atmosphere.
In Vegas then, was glamorous. There was nothing like Las Vegas. I mean, the limousines, the hotels.
There were women, there was drinking, there was gambling.
They would send big shrimps up to the room, like baskets. I mean, the food was unbelievable.
I mean, I was around movie stars every night. I took Jack Benny to the fights. I took him to other casinos.
You have to know that my father had a piece of that because at the Flamingo, because he would run his junkets there. So, I mean, my father was a big shot over there. He wasn't just anybody that would gamble. So I could have anything. And he was like the king. I mean, they sent limousines all day long for us.
I got caught up, and I'd be very honest. I became as much of a pervert as anybody else up here. I enjoyed it.
They would come with these big buckets of cloths because it was hot out, you know? So we're laying around the pool, and my sister, she had a tattoo on her leg. And my father said, "What's that thing on your leg?" She says, "Oh, Daddy, it's a cockamamie." And he says, "What kind of cockamamie? It's 3 days in the sun, and you got this thing on your leg, and it's not going away." And she says, "It's a good one. I spent $25, and it's like indelible ink, and it won't fall off, you know." And he says, this is a real tattoo." He says, "You shorty." That's what he called me. He says, "Go inside and get a bottle of polish remover," right? And now in the Jewish religion, you don't get a tattoo. I don't give a rat's ass who you are. You just don't do that, you know? So we got the bottle of polish remover, and he pours it on my sister, and he's rubbing the leg, and he sees that the leg, it's turning purple. That tattoo is not coming off, and he freaked. I thought he was going to rip her limb off. You know, he got crazy. He said, "What are you trying to do to me? You're going to be a disgrace to the family." I mean, I looked at him. I said, "My sister and I are going to be a disgrace to your families." And my grandfather's Gura, and he's telling me that tattoo was a disgrace to the family. He was crazy. Stop, I can't talk anymore.
'50s America. The baby boom. 15-cent hamburgers. $5,000 for a new home in the suburbs. Post-World War II America is the land of the free, the home of the prosperous. Kitchens filled with washers, dryers, refrigerators, an endless parade of labor-saving doodads for the happy American consumer. But one appliance will change society itself, the television.
I never got money from
And in 1951, in living rooms across the nation, the American mob comes to TV.
The Senate Crime Investigating Committee issues its blistering report on the nation's underworld. After 11 months of probing into organized crime, Senator Kefauver pictures the 1951 gangster.
I think it should be brought to the attention of the public that the gangster, the modern-day gangster, is quite a different sort of person than there used to be during the 1920s, during the Al Capone days.
Estes Kefauver, a little-known senator from Tennessee, takes a special crime committee on the road for 92 days in 14 cities. Nothing much comes of it until somebody has the bright idea that it just might make good TV. It does. Husbands come home to find housework undone, their wives glued to the television set and wanting to talk about one thing, the mob.
For a new drama on its final day. Again, Frank Costello, alleged gambling czar, is the target for grilling. Again, he refuses to divulge his wealth. On the subject of his duties as a citizen, Senator Toby has searching questions.
What have you ever done for your country as a good citizen?
Well, I don't know what you claim, what you mean by that.
Well, you're looking back over the years now to that time when you became a citizen, and we're now standing 20-odd years after that. You must have in your mind some things you've done that you can speak of to your credit as an American citizen. If so, what are they?
Paid my tax.
It's the #1 show in America. For 13 days, 600 guys and dolls parade across America's TV screens. Although not one indictment comes out of the hearings, the mob's no longer a secret society. Politicians learned that TV is good publicity. The mob learns just the opposite. From now on, wise guys will never escape the harsh glare of publicity.
Moe. He went to the Senate. I watched it on TV. And Moe went with 104 temperature. He tried to tell them, this is when Moe was very sick. He'd had 2 or 3 heart attacks and he had coronaries. And he was running, his arm was always paining, but he still went. Senator Toby said to him, would you want your sons to be in the business you are? And Moe said, no, I would like him to be like you are, Senator. He meant it. But Moe used to always tell me, if you're going to be nice to somebody, be nice to somebody where it'll do you the most good. And I think he figured if he showed respect to Toby, maybe that he'd take it a little easier, because he was sick. He died soon after, I think. It wasn't long, because he was really sick, Moe. I think I loved most about Moe how he felt about me. He used to tell me all the time, you're the only one I ever wanted to marry. And I'll be married to you until the day I die. And he kept his word. I knew that I was special. And I felt like I was special to Ben and Willie and all of them. They had a loyalty. We all stuck together. Our little mob. We were supposed to be our individual family. For instance, after Moe died, they called a meeting at the Flamingo. Willie and Davy said, come on, Elmira, let's sit down and come in with us, because now you're a partner in the Flamingo. So I went in, and after they started talking and they asked me what I thought of things, I started to cry, because I thought, Moe, I was in his chair. So I got out of the meeting, and I before I got out, I said, I don't care how Willie and Davy vote, but however you guys vote, vote for me, because I agree with whatever you say. Everything I own is in your hands. I trust you.
Trust has been the basis of the American mob's success. From brutal immigrant street fighters, they've transformed themselves into businessmen. They've taken crime and organized it. They've killed each other, but they've also kept each other's secrets. Soon, we'll all come crashing down. Booze built the mob. Drugs will destroy it. The golden age of the American mob will soon be over. The mob's code of silence will soon be broken. The mob's code of loyalty will soon be betrayed.
As things start evolving and changing and people start dealing with drugs, it changed. You know, it's not like it was in the old days.
Everybody had contracts on everybody in the group at the time. They were going to kill me, they were going to kill him, they were going to kill each other. They started killing each other. You know, I mean, it's got really nuts.
What happened was going to happen. It's the inevitable. You're going to die, or you're going to go to jail. I mean, those are two constants on the street. You know, nobody makes it. Nobody runs the gauntlet.